The day my son walked away, a father's heartbreak that changed everything. Alright, folks, before we dive into this story, let me say this straight from the heart. Welcome to Hidden Truth. True Stories, a place where real life hits harder than any movie ever could. And before I start, tell me real quick in the comments, where are you watching from? Because today's story isn't just painful, it's the kind of wound that never fully heals. So listen close. My name doesn't matter anymore, not after everything I've been through, but let me take you back to the day my whole world cracked wide open. I was standing outside my own house, the house I built brick by brick with these same worn-out hands, waiting for my son to show up. I was 70, slow, tired, but still proud that I raised a boy I thought would stand by me till my last breath. Man, I was so wrong. He pulled up with his wife sitting next to him, arms crossed, face all cold like she was the queen, and I was just some stranger wasting her time. My son didn't even look me in the eye when he stepped out of the car. That's when I felt something was off, but I had no clue that this moment would be the beginning of the end. He took a slow breath and said, "Dad, we need to talk." Now, when someone starts with those words, you already know it ain't good news. My stomach tightened, but I tried to smile. "Go ahead, son," I said. "What's wrong?" His wife stepped forward before he could even open his mouth and said, "It's time for you to move. This place is ours now." Just like that. No kindness. No respect. No shame. I felt the ground shift under me. "Ours?" I repeated. "What do you mean ours?" My son looked away, rubbing his forehead like this conversation was a burden to him. "Dad, you signed it over. The house, the car, the farm, everything is under my name now. You agreed to it." I felt like somebody punched me straight in the chest. Sure, I had signed papers before, trusting him, believing he was helping me secure things for the future. But I never imagined he'd use that trust to take everything I had left. "But son, where am I supposed to go?" My voice trembled in a way I hated. A man spends a lifetime building strength, and in one moment, weakness spills out like water. His wife rolled her eyes, rolled them, like my pain was an annoying fly buzzing around her head. "That's not our problem," she said. My own son didn't defend me. He didn't say a word. Just stood there with his head down, like a coward afraid of his own shadow. I looked at him, really looked, and realized I didn't recognize him anymore. The boy I raised, the boy I gave everything to, wasn't standing in front of me. This man was a stranger wearing my son's face. My heart cracked. "So that's it?" I whispered. "After everything I did for you?" He didn't answer. He just mumbled, "It's better this way, Dad." He was doing me some kind of favor by pushing me out of my own home. I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse. But I just stood there, frozen, while he and his wife walked inside and closed the door behind them, same door I painted with my own hands back when life still felt hopeful. I walked down the driveway slowly, feeling each step heavier than the last. Cars passed. Nobody looked. Nobody cared. And maybe that's the hardest part, realizing that the world keeps spinning even when your life stops. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what would happen next. All I knew was this. The son I loved more than my own breath had chosen someone else over me, and that choice shattered everything I had left. And that, folks, is where my story truly begins, because the day he walked away was the day I learned that betrayal hurts most when it comes from the people you gave your whole world to. How I spent my entire life building a future that was never meant for me. When people say parents sacrifice everything for their kids, it sounds like a nice quote on a wall, but for me, it was real sweat, real struggle, real years slipping away while I told myself, "It's okay, my son will take care of me one day." Man, if I had known how wrong I was, maybe I would have saved something for myself, maybe I would have kept a little corner of life just for me. But back then, all I cared about was giving him a life better than the one I had. I woke up before sunrise every single day, hands freezing, body aching, and I worked at farm like it was the only thing keeping us alive. Because for a long time, it was. I remember those mornings when I didn't even have enough money for breakfast, but I'd still pack a good lunch for my boy, telling him, "Go on, champ, eat up. You need it more than me." And he'd smile, and in that moment, every bit of tiredness felt worth it. I sold crops, milk, eggs, whatever I could, always thinking, one day my son won't struggle the way I did. When he got older and said he wanted to go to a better school, I worked double shifts, broke my back hauling things men half. My age refused to lift, and I didn't complain once. I told myself, this is what fathers do. When he got sick, I sold my old bike. When he wanted a computer, I sold my last piece of land behind the barn. When he said he needed money to settle down, I dug into the savings I collected over 40 years, my emergency money, my retirement, my safety net, and I placed it right in his hand. Every time, I thought I was investing in our future, in a family that would stay close, in a son who would one day say, "Dad, you don't worry anymore. I got you." That moment never came. Instead, all the giving turned into a big empty space inside me, a space where my dreams used to live. And looking back now, I realized something painful. I wasn't building our future. I was building his future, while mine slowly faded away. I didn't buy clothes for myself unless they were falling apart. I didn't rest. I didn't travel. I didn't treat myself even once. I lived like a man holding his breath, waiting for the day my son would say, "Dad, come live with us. You earned it." Instead, the day came when he told me to leave everything behind and get out of the house I built. And that hit me like a punch I never saw coming. People think betrayal happens in one big moment, like a dramatic scene in a movie, but sometimes it happens slowly. It starts with small things. A little disrespect, a cold tone, less phone calls, less visits. And then one day, boom, it hits you that you were never part of his plan. You were just a stepping stone he used to climb higher. I used to brag about him to everyone, the neighbors, the shopkeepers, the men at the tea stall. "My son is doing so well," I'd say with pride filling my chest. Now those same people look at me with sad eyes, like they're thinking, "Poor old man, he gave too much." And maybe they're right. Maybe I did give too much. But what else was I supposed to do? He was my only child, my whole world, my whole purpose. And now, as I look back on all those years of struggle, I can't help but wonder, did I raise a son, or did I raise someone who learned only how to take? Because the future I worked so hard to build, it wasn't meant for me. It was meant for a version of him that never existed, a version who loved me back the way I loved him. And as that truth hit me, I realized something even deeper. My story wasn't just about loss. It was about waking up after decades and seeing the world clearly for the first time, even if the truth cut like a knife. The daughter-in-law who turned my own son against me. Man, let me tell you something. Sometimes it ain't just the person you raise who hurts you. It's the people they bring into your life. And in my case, that was my son's wife. I still remember the first time she walked into our home, all smiles and fake sweetness, like she was auditioning for a role in a movie. I welcomed her with open arms, thinking, "Hey, if she makes him happy, she makes me happy." But little did I know, that smile hit a storm that would one day wash me out of my own life. At first, it was small things, subtle comments about my habits, my clothes, even my age. "Dad, maybe you shouldn't lift that, you'll hurt yourself," she'd say with this sugar-coated tone that made my son nod along like I was some old fool. I brushed it off. I thought, she's just caring, right? Wrong. Slowly, over the months, she started planting ideas in my son's head, ideas about independence, about moving forward, about how Dad is everything he needs. I didn't notice it at first, but the man I raised, the one who used to call me in the middle of the night just to talk, started hesitating before he spoke to me, started rolling his eyes when I asked for help, started treating me like I was a stranger in my own house. And it hurt, man. It hurt worse than any insult. I tried talking to him, heart in my throat, saying, "Son, what's going on? You're acting different." But he'd shrug. "I'm fine, Dad. Everything's fine." That's when I realized he wasn't fine. He was being told what to think, what to feel, how to act. And it wasn't love guiding him anymore. It was someone else's agenda. By the time he married her officially, I was already on the edge. The house I spent decades building, the farm I toiled in, the money I saved, suddenly, she was the one managing it all, making decisions, controlling every move my son made. And I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't arguing, he wasn't defending me, he was agreeing, nodding, swallowing everything I taught him. Every lesson about respect, about family, about loyalty. And I had to swallow my pride too, because every word I said, every complaint, was met with, "She's right, Dad. I think you're overthinking." Overthinking? I wasn't overthinking. I was watching my life slip away, bit by bit, all because a woman he loved convinced him I was a burden. I worked my hands raw for him, and she turned him into someone who didn't even notice the sacrifices I made. And the worst part? When the moment came for him to choose, when he had to decide between me and her, he chose her. No hesitation. No second thought. Just like that, I was erased from the home I built, from the life I lived, from the heart of the son I raised. That's how betrayal doesn't just happen. It's built, brick by smile, until one day you wake up and realize the people you trusted most have rewritten your story without even asking you. And that, my friends, is when you feel completely alone, even in your own blood. The stepson who took my place in my son's heart. Man, nothing hurts like watching your own kid replace you in his heart with someone else. And in my case, that someone was his stepson. I still remember the first time the boy came around, all shy smiles and big eyes, acting like he owned the place, like he already had a claim to the house I built, the farm I worked my hands raw on, and the life I lived. At first, I tried to be welcoming, thinking, "Hey, he's just a kid, maybe I can help him grow up right." But it didn't take long before I realized he wasn't just a kid. He was a wedge between me and the son I raised. Every conversation I tried to have with my son, every joke, every little lesson about life, was interrupted by that boy, by his presence, by the way my son's eyes lit up when he smiled or asked for something. I would be talking, trying to give advice, and my son would nod at him first, answer him first, treat him like the priority in his life, and me? I was just there. A shadow in my own home. I poured my soul into raising my son, gave him everything I had, everything I could scrape together, and in return, he made room in his heart for someone who wasn't even his blood. I know people will say, "It's normal for kids to bond with step-siblings." But this wasn't normal. It was a replacement, a total swap of roles where I went from father to irrelevant figure. Every time I looked at my son, I tried to find the boy I knew, the boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and wide smiles, the boy who called me hero. But that boy was gone, replaced by someone else's family, someone else's influence. And the worst part? I couldn't even be angry at the stepson, not really. He was just a kid, innocent in his way, but he represented everything I lost. He represented the cold reality that my son had chosen a new life, a new family, a new version of himself where I didn't belong. I tried reasoning, tried talking, tried telling my son, "Look, I gave you everything. Don't forget where you came from." But the words hit empty walls. My son didn't even flinch. He didn't argue. He didn't defend me. He just kept walking down a path that left me behind, and the boy, the stepson, was right there beside him, smiling, innocent, unaware of the storm he had stepped into. That's when it hit me. Sometimes love isn't enough to hold someone in your life. Sometimes no amount of sacrifice, no sleepless nights, no blood, sweat, and tears can stop someone from walking away. And that day, standing in my empty house, seeing my son laugh with his stepson, seeing the life I built being claimed by a new family, I realized the truth that hurt more than any betrayal. I had been replaced, not by someone stronger, not by someone wiser, but by a kid, a stranger, and the woman my son loved, and there I was, invisible. That's when the loneliness hit like a freight train, and I understood the real depth of betrayal. Not just loss of property, not just loss of home, but the loss of a place in your own child's heart, a place I had thought would always be mine. When love turns into debt, the gifts, the sacrifices, the betrayal. Man, let me tell you, love can be a funny thing. Looked at one way, it's warm, comforting, life-giving, but when you give it blindly, it can turn into debt, a heavy weight that never gets paid back. And for me, that's exactly what happened with my son. I spent decades hustling, grinding, waking up before the sun even had a chance to shine, all so he could have a life I never had, all so he could chase dreams I sacrificed mine for. And I did it with a smile, telling myself, "It's all worth it if he's happy." I remember those nights counting coins to make sure he had shoes, clothes, school supplies, sometimes going without myself just to make sure he never went without. When he wanted a bicycle, I worked 2 extra jobs to get it. When he wanted books, I sold a piece of land I had been saving as a safety net for my old age. Every gift, every sacrifice, I did thinking love was enough to bind us together forever. But man, I was wrong. Because love doesn't always get returned the way you expect, and sacrifices can be forgotten faster than you think. One day, I realized that every coin I spent, every hour I worked, every sleepless night I endured, had been spent not to secure my happiness or his, but to create a debt he didn't feel like repaying, not in gratitude, not in loyalty, not even in recognition. And it cut deeper than I ever imagined. Gifts turned into expectations. Sacrifices became invisible. And oh, the betrayal. The very son I gave my life for didn't hesitate to turn his back, to side with someone else, to erase me from the life I had worked so damn hard to build. I tried to talk to him, tried to make him see, tried to remind him of all the nights I stayed awake, all the struggles I endured just for him, but it was like speaking into a void. "Dad, you don't get it," he said, cold as ice, and that one sentence shattered me more than any words could. The house I built, the car I drove for years, the farm I poured blood into, all of it suddenly felt like it had been nothing, more than collateral in a game I never agreed to play. I looked around at the walls, at the furniture, at the empty fridge that once held our dreams, and I realized something terrifying. Love alone doesn't protect you. Loyalty doesn't shield you. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee a bond. And the people you give your everything to, sometimes, they'll take it all and leave you with nothing, not even the memory that counts. That night, sitting alone in a room that once felt like home, I understood the cruel truth. Giving your life for someone doesn't ensure they'll care for you in return. And the debt of love? Sometimes, it's a debt you pay in tears, in loneliness, in the hollow ache of realizing you built someone else's future while your own vanished. And as the city slept outside, oblivious to my pain, I made a vow to survive, to reclaim what I could, and to tell the world, in case anyone out there is listening, that even when love turns to death, even when sacrifice is betrayed, there's still a fire left in those of us who refuse to be erased. How my house, farm, car, and savings slipped out of my hands. Man, this part still stings every time I think about it. How everything I built, everything I worked for, just slipped through my fingers like sand, and the worst part, I never even saw it coming. I spent decades grinding, hustling, putting in long hours on the farm, keeping the house in shape, making sure every bill was paid, every loan covered, every little corner of my life secure, thinking that my son would one day step up and honor all of it. But nah, life had other plans. It started small, little hints, little suggestions that maybe I should transfer the car into his name, just in case. Or put the house in both our names, so it's easier for him to manage later. I trusted him. Come on, he was my blood, my boy. I didn't even question it. I thought, he's a good kid. He'll take care of it. But what I didn't see was how fast that good kid was learning to play the game, learning to push me aside without me even noticing. One day, I woke up to notices from the bank, bills I didn't understand, documents I hadn't signed, or so I thought, and suddenly my name was on paperwork that didn't belong to me anymore. The farm, where I planted my first crop with my bare hands, was now in his name. The house I painted, repaired, and lived in every single day for years? Gone. The car I drove to work, to the fields, to the markets, to bring him everywhere he needed to be? Not mine. And the savings? The only money I had for emergencies, for old age, for myself, slowly drained, funneled into accounts I didn't even know existed. I felt like I was being erased, man. Everything I touched, everything I cared for, was being rewritten by someone I trusted more than anyone in the world. I tried to reason with him, tried to make him see the years of work, the nights I stayed up, the money I scrimped and saved, but it didn't matter. He didn't argue. He didn't fight. He just shrugged. And his wife, man, she was always there, smiling, nodding, guiding him, whispering in his ear, making sure I was always the one left standing empty-handed while they walked away with what was mine. I felt powerless, humiliated, and angry all at once. I thought about calling the police, about lawyers, about some justice, but by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. Everything I spent my life building, protecting, loving, it had been taken, and not just physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I had been robbed, man. And sitting alone in the silence of the house I once called home, hearing only the wind and my own heavy breathing, I understood something painfully clear. Life doesn't owe you fairness. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Sacrifice doesn't protect you from betrayal. And the people you give everything to, sometimes, they'll walk away with it all, leaving you staring at the empty walls of a world you built, realizing that your trust was the cost of their gain. It was crushing, but that's when I started thinking about how to fight back, not with anger, not with violence, but with wisdom, with patience, with a plan, because if they thought they could erase me completely, they hadn't counted on the stubbornness of a man who gave everything and still had something left inside him, the fire to survive. Man, that day hit me harder than any storm I've ever weathered. I used to walk into my house and feel like the king of my own world, like everything I built, every brick, every nail, every drop of sweat belonged to me and the boy I raised. But one afternoon, I realized something that shook me to my core. I wasn't a father anymore. Not in his eyes. Not in the people around me's eyes. I was just an inconvenience, a shadow that needed to be moved out of the way so my son and his new family could live comfortably without the weight of my presence. It started small, like most betrayals do. Phone calls unanswered, texts ignored, casual invitations brushed aside. But that day, he told me straight, without hesitation. Dad, maybe it's better if you just stay somewhere else. We have plans, and you slow us down. Just like that. No apology. No warmth. No hesitation. I remember standing there, my hands gripping the counter, my vision blurry, and thinking, wait, what? I spent my life for you, and now I'm slowing you down? My Heart felt like it was cracking in slow motion. I tried talking to him, tried explaining, tried reminding him of every sleepless night, every dollar I saved, every lesson I taught him, but it didn't matter. He didn't argue. He didn't defend me. He just looked at me like I was a stranger who accidentally showed up in the wrong place. And that's when I realized the son I raised, the boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and big dreams, was gone. He had been replaced by a man who saw me as optional, someone whose presence was inconvenient, whose love was unneeded, whose sacrifices didn't count. I felt cold, hollow, like the floor beneath me wasn't solid anymore. I walked through the house, every room a memory, every corner a reminder of what used to be. And as I looked around, I saw it clearly. This house, this life, this family, it wasn't mine anymore. I wasn't a father. I was a ghost. And the worst part? I realized that nobody outside my own home cared. Neighbors, friends, even distant relatives, they all smiled politely, said their condolences, but life went on. Only me, and the echo of everything I had built. That's when the loneliness hit me full force. That's when I understood the brutal truth. Sometimes, the people you love most can see you as nothing more than a burden, a memory, a shadow of what they used to need. And in that moment, standing alone in my own home, I made a decision. If I was going to survive, if I was going to reclaim even a small piece of my life, I had to stop seeing myself as a father to them and start seeing myself as a man who still had worth, still had fire, still had the right to fight back against the betrayal that tried to erase me. That day, I realized my battle wasn't just about property or money. It was about dignity, about respect, about proving to myself that even at 70, I still mattered, and that just maybe the people who thought they could discard me would learn the hard way that I wasn't going anywhere quietly. Starting over at 70, my new life in a tiny broken room. Man, starting over at 70, it ain't like flipping a switch or taking a weekend trip. No, it's raw, it's painful, and it's lonely as hell. One day, I had a house, a farm, a car, money in the bank. The next, I was packing what little I could carry into a worn-out bag and moving into a tiny broken room that smelled like dust and old paint, walls cracked, ceiling leaking, floor creaking under every step. I remember walking in the first night, looking around, feeling the cold sink into my bones and thinking, "This is my life now?" My pride screamed at me, my heart ached, but I had nowhere else to go. I set down my bag, sat on the single chair, and just breathed. The silence was deafening. No laughter, no warmth, no memories other than the ones I carried in my head. I tried to make it feel like home, a little effort here and there, cleaning the corners, hanging a small photo of my younger days, but nothing could mask the emptiness. And yet, in that emptiness, I started seeing things clearly for the first time. I realized that life didn't end just because my son walked away. I realized that even though I was 70, even though my body ached and my bank account was empty, I still had the power to take control of what remained, my mind, my decisions, my dignity. Some nights, I sit by the cracked window and watch the city lights flicker, thinking about everything I lost, everything I gave, and everything I still have, my memories, my experience, my stubbornness to keep fighting. And loneliness is brutal. No lie, it hits you in ways you never imagined, waking you up at 3 a.m. with nothing but the sound of your own breath and the creaking floor. But I also realized something else. This tiny room, this broken down place, was a new beginning. It wasn't the life I wanted, but it was mine. No one could take it from me, because I carried my own strength with me. Every morning, I get up, stretch my aching joints, fix a small breakfast, and step outside, reminding myself that even at 70, I can still walk, still work, still fight for whatever I can rebuild. And that's exactly what I plan to do. No more living in memories. No more begging for recognition. No more feeling invisible. This broken room is the start of a life where I decide the rules, where I protect myself, where I survive, and maybe, one day, I'll reclaim more than just my pride. Because losing everything isn't the end. It's the beginning of proving to the world, and to myself, that even after betrayal, even after abandonment, even after 70 years of giving everything and being left with almost nothing, a man can still rise. And man, I swear, that fire inside me, it's burning brighter than ever, and it won't be extinguished by anyone, not even the son who walked away. The night I called the police and asked for justice, man, that night felt like the longest night of my life. I'd been living in that tiny broken room for weeks, feeling the walls close in on me, feeling every memory of my house, my farm, my car, my savings slipping away like smoke, and I realized something. I couldn't just sit here and take it. I needed someone to see the truth, someone to say, "This ain't right." So, with my hand shaking and my heart pounding like a drum, I picked up the phone and called the police. I don't care what anyone says, making the call at 70, knowing I was about to speak the truth about my own son, it took everything I had. I told them everything, how I spent my life building a future, how I gave him my house, my farm, my money, and how he, along with his wife and stepson, pushed me out, leaving me with nothing. I expected maybe a sigh, maybe a quick brush off, but the officer on the line listened. And let me tell you, really listening felt like a small relief. Finally, someone knew the weight I was carrying. They asked questions, lots of questions, about documents, signatures, transfers, and I explained it all, every detail, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. And as I spoke, I realized something important. I wasn't just reporting theft or fraud. I was reporting a lifetime of betrayal. A son who abandoned the one person who gave him everything without hesitation. The officer said they would start an investigation, check the documents, see if anything was illegal, and just maybe, there could be justice. Hearing that word, justice, felt strange. It felt foreign. I'd spent 70 years thinking love, loyalty, and blood would protect me. But now I realize that sometimes you have to fight, even against your own flesh and blood, to get what's rightfully yours. And as I hung up the phone, sitting alone in that tiny broken room, I felt a mixture of fear and hope. Fear, because confronting your son, legally, calling the police on your own child, isn't easy. It feels unnatural. But hope, too, because, finally, someone was seeing what I had lived through. Finally, maybe, justice could exist, even for an old man who had been betrayed by his own blood. That night, I didn't sleep much. I thought about everything: the house, the farm, the car, the money, the years of sacrifice. But I also thought about the fire inside me, the stubbornness that refused to let me be erased quietly. And I made a silent promise. No matter what happens next, I wouldn't let this betrayal define the last chapter of my life. I was 70, yes, but I was still alive, still fighting, and just maybe my story wasn't over yet. Because sometimes, standing up, speaking the truth, and asking for justice is the only way to remind the world, and yourself, that you still matter, even when the people you loved the most forgot your worth. What the investigation revealed about my son's choices. Man, when the police finally started digging into everything, it felt like watching a slow-motion storm roll in. I had spent 70 years trusting my son, believing that blood and love would keep us together, but the investigation showed a truth I'd been too blind to see. My son wasn't just turning away from me emotionally, he had planned, calculated, and executed the takeover of everything I built. The officers went through the documents, the transfers, the bank accounts, the deeds to my house and farm, and it was clear. Some papers had been signed with my consent, yeah, but there were a few shady moves, edits, and manipulations that made me realize he didn't just take what I gave willingly. He exploited my trust, my age, and my faith in him. The man I had raised, the boy I loved, had allowed his wife and that stepson to guide his decisions, to push him towards selfishness and greed, and he went along with it. It wasn't a moment of weakness, it was a pattern, a choice. And as the truth unfolded, I felt anger, hurt, and a strange sense of clarity all at once. I realized that my son had chosen a life that didn't include me, that he had rewritten his priorities to fit a family that wasn't his first, that he had abandoned the man who spent decades shaping him into someone capable of love and respect. But here's the kicker. The investigation also revealed small cracks that gave me hope. Some of the transfers were questionable. Some accounts were in limbo. The stepson's presence and influence had been subtle but significant. And there was enough evidence for lawyers to argue that I had been taken advantage of, not just abandoned. Hearing this made me feel alive again. Maybe the scales could tip back in my favor. Maybe justice could exist even after betrayal. I remember sitting in that tiny broken room, phone in hand, police reports spread out on the table, and feeling a fire reignite inside me. 70 years old, left with almost nothing but still breathing, still fighting, still having a chance to reclaim not just my property, but my dignity. That's when I realized the harsh truth about life. Sometimes, the people you trust most make the worst choices, and sometimes, the people you least expect, the officers, the lawyers, even strangers, are the ones who can help you reclaim what's yours. And as I prepared for the next steps, I understood something deeper. My son's choices didn't define me. His betrayal didn't erase my years of sacrifice or the strength I carried. I was 70, yes, but I was still a man who built, fought, and survived. And that's something no one could take away, no matter how far he tried to walk from me. Man, this part of my life hit me in ways I never expected. You spend 70 years thinking blood is thicker than water, thinking family is the people who'll have your back no matter what. But then life flips the script, and suddenly, the people you love most feel like strangers. Well, complete strangers start stepping in like the family you never knew you needed. After the police investigation got underway, I began talking to social workers, elder advocates, even a few neighbors who saw what was happening. And you know what? They treated me with respect, listened to my story, and didn't judge me for being taken advantage of by my own son. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt understood. Meanwhile, my son and his wife? They acted like they didn't know me at all, like the man who gave everything to raise a boy, fix a house, run a farm, and scrape together money for their future never existed. I realized something painful. Family isn't always the people you share DNA with. Sometimes, family is the people who show up when you're broken, who see your pain, and who help you stand again. And man, I had to accept that. I reached out to a couple of distant friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, and they came through. They offered me a place to stay for a while, helped me organize documents for the investigation, even brought meals. I won't lie, there were tears, lots of them. Not the kind that let you cry and move on, but the kind that remind you there's still goodness in the world. I had to shift my thinking. The son I raised had chosen another path, a path that didn't include me, and if I wanted to survive, I had to stop seeing him as my only source of love and validation. It was brutal, man, realizing that the person you poured decades of your life into could erase you from their heart so easily. But with strangers stepping in, with unexpected allies helping me rebuild, I began to understand a new truth. Sometimes the people who betray you most are your blood, but sometimes, the people who truly see you, who truly have your back, are strangers who become family through actions, not words. And as I leaned into that support, I felt a spark I hadn't felt in years, a reminder that life goes on, that there's still hope, that even after betrayal, even after abandonment, you can find people who will walk with you, not against you. That night, sitting in my tiny broken room with letters, reports, and phone numbers spread across the floor, I realized that family isn't always given at birth. Sometimes, you have to find it, nurture it, and allow it to replace the empty spaces left by the people who walked away. And that realization, painful as it was, gave me something no money, no property, no stolen house or farm could ever take: strength. Man, sometimes the truth isn't what you see on the surface. It's buried under years of pride, lies, and selfishness, and in my case, it took me a long time to understand why my own son walked away after everything I gave him. At first, I blamed his wife, blamed the stepson, blamed the circumstances, even blamed myself for trusting too much, for giving too much, for not seeing the signs. But as the investigation unfolded, as lawyers questioned him and documents were examined, a picture emerged that shocked me to my core. My son hadn't just walked away because he wanted independence or because he loved someone else. No, it ran deeper than that. He had grown up seeing the world through his wife's lens, letting her define what mattered, letting her guide his every decision. He had convinced himself that my sacrifices were burdens, that my age and my needs slowed him down, that my house, my farm, my money were obstacles to the life he wanted to build with her. And the stepson? He became a mirror in which my son saw a version of himself he wanted to be, a version that didn't owe anything to the man who raised him. That truth hurt more than anything else. The realization that it wasn't a single moment of weakness, but a series of choices, repeated over years, that led to my abandonment. It wasn't sudden, it was carefully constructed. He had learned, slowly, to distance himself, to listen more to her, to consider her opinions over mine, and to justify leaving me behind as the logical choice. And I hated it, man. I hated it so much because loyalty and blood should have mattered more than influence, more than convenience, more than selfish ambition. I spent decades thinking that raising him with care and honesty would create a bond unbreakable by any outside force. But the hidden truth was that no bond can survive if one side decides it's easier to erase the other. I had been blind, thinking he was still my boy, still my son, still carrying the values I tried to instill, when in reality, he had already become a man who no longer saw me as necessary. And the saddest part? He probably believed he was making the right choice, that leaving me behind and following the path his wife and stepson guided him toward was logical, responsible, even kind. But it was betrayal wrapped in a mask of reason. That night, after learning all this, I sat alone in my tiny broken room and let the anger and hurt wash over me. And through that pain, I realized something crucial. The hidden truth behind his abandonment wasn't just about greed or manipulation. It was about choices we make, consciously or unconsciously, about who we love, who we honor, and who we decide deserves a place in our life. And though it hurt like hell to see my son make the choices he did, knowing the truth gave me clarity, gave me a direction, and reminded me that while people may abandon you, the fire inside you, the will to survive, to fight back, to reclaim your life, that fire can never be taken. Man, life has a way of flipping the script when you least expect it. I never thought the day would come when the son who walked away, the son who chose his wife and stepson over me, would show up on my doorstep needing help. And yet, there he was, standing in front of that tiny broken room I'd made my own, looking smaller somehow, worn down, and maybe realizing for the first time what it meant to leave me behind. I had been preparing for months for the possibility that I'd never see him again, that he'd continue living in his little world while I survived on scraps, slowly, rebuilding my life piece by piece. But when he arrived, the first words out of his mouth weren't apologies. They were hesitations, stutters, a nervous energy I hadn't seen in him since he was a boy. "Dad, I messed up," he said finally, eyes darting away, avoiding mine like he knew the weight of everything he had done. And in that moment, man, I felt everything at once: anger, relief, sadness, love, and the bitter truth that sometimes the people who hurt you most are also the ones who end up needing you the most. He needed me to fix something for him, some mess he and his wife had created with finances, with decisions, with their lives, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of the boy I raised, the boy who trusted me, who looked to me, who once called me hero, peek through the man who had abandoned me. I took a deep breath, steadying my emotions, because I wasn't going to let my anger ruin the moment. I helped him. I gave advice. I guided him like I always had, even though inside I was hurting, even though every memory of betrayal lingered like a shadow in the corners of my mind. And as I worked through the problem with him, I realized something important. Helping him now didn't mean I forgave everything. It didn't erase the years of abandonment, the stolen house, the drained savings, the loneliness. But it reminded me of who I was, of the man I built myself to be, of the strength I still carried despite everything. And man, watching him struggle, watching him finally see the consequences of his choices, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Satisfaction because the truth was unfolding before him, and sorrow because it took so long for him to realize that the man he left behind still had power, still had wisdom, and still had a heart big enough to help even after betrayal. That day, I understood that life isn't just about what people take from you. It's about what you choose to do with what's left, your strength, your dignity, your heart. And even if he came back only because he needed me, that moment reminded me that the fire inside me, the resilience I had carried for 70 years, was still alive, still strong, and still in control. Because in the end, no one can erase a lifetime of strength and love, no matter how far they try to walk away. Man, nothing prepares you for the hardest decision a father ever has to make, especially when you've spent a lifetime giving everything and the people you trusted most betray you. By the time I reached 70, after losing my house, my farm, my savings, and feeling abandoned by my son, I realized that life was forcing me to make a choice. Not about money, not about property, but about my heart, my pride, and my dignity. Do I fight tooth and nail to reclaim everything, dragging my son through court battles, exposing all the betrayal, risking our last connection? Or do I walk away, preserve what little peace I have, and rebuild my life on my own terms? And man, let me tell you, that decision tore me up inside. I thought about every night I stayed awake, counting coins to give him what he needed, every scrape knee I bandaged, every dollar I saved for him, every lesson I taught him about respect, loyalty, and love. And now, it came down to whether I'd let anger and revenge control me, or whether I'd reclaim my life without letting bitterness steal what was left of my soul. I spent nights pacing the tiny broken room I'd made home, wrestling with myself, heart pounding, hands trembling, mind spinning. I knew if I chose to fight legally, I might win back some property, maybe even the farm, maybe even some of the money, but I risked completely severing the last thread of relationship with my son. If I walked away, I kept my dignity, preserved my sanity, and kept my fire alive, but I'd forever wonder if I had let him get away with everything. And man, the weight of that choice, it's hard to put into words. I realized that being a father isn't just about giving, it's about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. I thought about the friends, the strangers who had become family, the people who actually saw me, respected me, and stood by me. I thought about the lessons I wanted to leave behind, not just for him, but for myself. And finally, I made the decision. I was done letting the past define my future. I would reclaim and survive on my own terms, without bitterness poisoning my last years, without letting the betrayal strip me of the fire inside. I might lose what I could legally win, but I'd never lose myself again. That night, as I sat by the small window, city lights flickering like tiny sparks of hope, I felt a calm settle over me. It wasn't relief. It wasn't joy. It was clarity. The hardest decision a father can ever make isn't about money or property. It's about choosing who you are after betrayal, deciding how you'll live when the people you loved most walk away, and making sure that even after everything you still hold your head high. And man, for the first time in years, I knew I could do just that. Man, here I am, 70 years old, staring down the years I thought were lost, feeling the sting of betrayal still fresh in my bones, but also feeling a fire inside me that refuses to die. Losing my house, my farm, my car, my savings, and the son I raised, it would have crushed most men. But not me. I spent decades pouring every ounce of my heart, sweat, and blood into a life I thought was shared, and when it was stolen, I realized the one thing no one can take away is the strength, wisdom, and resilience I built along the way. Those tiny broken rooms, the cold nights, the moments of loneliness, they didn't break me, they forged me. And now, even at 70, I'm building again, slowly, piece by piece, reclaiming dignity, reclaiming pride, and rediscovering the parts of myself that I had hidden under years of sacrifice. I started small, saving a little money here and there, fixing up a corner of my new home, reconnecting with people who truly care, strangers who became family. Every day, I remind myself that life isn't about what others take from you. It's about what you do with what remains. And man, I've realized that even after betrayal, even after abandonment, you can rise. I don't know if my son will ever truly see the consequences of his choices, or if he'll ever come back fully into my life. Maybe he won't. But that doesn't matter anymore. What matters is me, my peace, my strength, my fire. I walk through each day with purpose, carrying the lessons of a lifetime, knowing that I've survived things most people can't even imagine. And the pain is still there, sometimes hitting like a wave out of nowhere, reminding me of the life I lost, the home I built, the love I gave that was taken. But it doesn't control me. I control me. And that's the ultimate revenge, not anger, not lawsuits, not proving a point, but living fully, fiercely, and with fire in your heart, even when the world tried to extinguish it. So to anyone listening, anyone watching, anyone who's ever been betrayed by someone they loved, it's not the end. Even at 70, even after losing everything, you can rise, you can rebuild, and you can reclaim your life. That's what I'm doing now. That's what I'll continue to do. And man, this story isn't just about loss. It's about survival, resilience, and the hidden truth that no matter how far people walk away from you, your own fire can always bring you back. Welcome to the real truth. True stories that don't sugarcoat life, that show the pain, the betrayal, and the ultimate triumph of a heart that refuses to give up, no matter what. And I'm living proof of that fire, still burning strong at 70, ready to take on whatever life throws next.